And we're back. It's Monday, June 23rd, and it's actually summer already. So that's great news. Summer on the way here. Lots of headlines, lots to talk about. Operation Midnight Hammer, obviously that's the big story. Bill C-5 supported by Conservatives. And are the Federal NDP irrelevant? And does the BC NDP know what it's doing? And RoboTaxi launches, all that and a lot more on the Really Big Show. I'm Jim Csek with NowMedia. With me, Iain Burns. And we're back, like I said, Monday, June 23rd, 9 a.m. And we here live streaming on YouTube. Good morning, Iain.
Howdy ho. And it really is summer here. It's 35 degrees and people are hiding from the sun.
They even closed the pool.
Really happened.
They even closed the pool in Ontario. Lots to talk about, though. But we're going to lead off with Operation Midnight Hammer here. And we're going to have a little clip here from the chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff here. He's going to explain Operation Midnight Hammer.
At midnight Friday into Saturday morning, a large B-2 strike package comprised of bombers launched from the continental United States. As part of a plan to maintain tactical surprise, part of the package proceeded to the west and into the Pacific as a decoy, a deception effort known only to an extremely small number of planners and key leaders here in Washington and in Tampa. The main strike package, comprised of 7 B-2 Spirit bombers, each with 2 crew members, proceeded quietly to the east with minimal communications. Throughout the 18-hour flight into the target area, the aircraft completed multiple in-flight refuelings. Once over land, the B-2s linked up with escort and support aircraft in a complex, tightly timed maneuver requiring exact synchronization across multiple platforms in a narrow piece of airspace, all done with minimal communications. This type of integration is exactly what our joint force does better than anyone else in the world. At approximately 5 p.m. Eastern Standard Time last night, and just prior to the strike package entering Iran, a U.S. submarine in the Central Command Area of Responsibility launched more than 24 Tomahawk land attack cruise missiles against key surface infrastructure targets at Esfahan. As the Operation Midnight Hammer strike package entered Iranian airspace, the U.S. employed several deception tactics, including decoys, as the 4th and 5th generation aircraft pushed out in front of the strike package at high altitude and high speed, sweeping in front of the package for enemy fighters and surface-to-air missile threats.
There you go. You can watch that full clip if you want. But that was Operation Midnight Hammer. Lots of reaction from the world on that, too. Lots and lots of reaction as the Americans used their stealth bombers in that raid.
Why, this is one of the consequences of having people in positions of power that are not very literate, semi-literate people. Why did he refer to it as a strike package? No literate person would ever do that. It just sort of, as I was listening to that, it just distracted me and broke my heart. Then he said comprised of, also illiterate. But anyway, aside from that, why are they like revealing all these details? Why is he talking about all these deceptions and like specific details of this operation? I feel like that's not. Is that wise? I mean, obviously they must be doing it for a reason. I suppose they're trying to kind of show how great they are or something like that.
I think it's more of a flex, right? To show.
But they're proud of their dishonesty, which I think is a bad thing. When America is supposed to be the rule setter and the great sort of paragon of nations, but they're admitting openly that they just they deceived the world, they deceived Iran, they deceived everybody, and then unilaterally dropped these bombs. You know, it's extraordinarily dishonest behavior. It's the kind of thing that rogue states do, but the Americans are proud of it now. I suppose it's all just part of how geopolitics has changed so dramatically in the last sort of 5 or 10 years, where America now just completely moral free, completely free of principles, which has probably always been true, but now they brag about it. It's almost like a Nietzschean transformation that has occurred in the US, which I think is very interesting.
I know a lot of the American media were saying, well, you said you were giving them 2 weeks and then you bombed them like basically the next day. But I do remember Trump saying 2 weeks or less. I mean, he did put that or less, and it was a lot of or less. They also talked about regime change, and that was Trump brought that up. He said the White House has attempted to calm nerves around the world after President Trump suggested on social media that Iran's government could be toppled. Trump was merely raising the question, likely trying to encourage it. Meanwhile, Israel continues to batter Iran with other world powers, including the EU, have urged Iran to not to attempt to block the Strait of Hormuz, through which about 20% of the world oil and gas flows. And a lot of the Iranian oil goes to China. Most of China's oil is purchased from Iran.
And that's basically Iran's last proper friend. Like, they're not friends, obviously, in reality, but a strong acquaintance, let's say, is China. So I doubt they're going to do that, because that would really harm the Chinese. But then the Chinese have huge oil reserves. I don't know if they would be able to sort of tactically permit that to occur to harm the world economy. But
yeah,
I just don't think so. I think the Chinese would be against that.
They also have their other friend there, Russia, that has vast resources there in oil and gas that can likely help out in those areas too. There was a statement that
Russia's not really. They've been very funny about it. I mean, Putin's come out talking about how many Russian speakers live in Israel, and the Russians are kind of on the fence a bit with this, really.
It's the weirdest one I thought was when Russia offered to play peacemaker.
Well, that's just what we call these days trolling.
Yeah, I mean, he's got his own thing that he can play peacemaker with. Mark Carney came out with a tweet there. It says, Iran's nuclear program is a grave threat to international security, and Canada has been consistently clear that Iran can never be allowed to develop a nuclear weapon. But then he goes on to encourage back to a diplomatic resolution to de-escalate. And he said he has... Go ahead.
I was just going to say, people like Carney and the Europeans, they keep going on about this. The what was it called again? The joint. I can't remember what it was, but it was the Quad or whatever, wasn't it? It was like 3 European countries, and the Obama US for a little bit was involved in it as well. The nuclear deal with Iran. People keep going on about that and saying, why don't we just persist with that? Like, that was great. That was working. But the main objection to that, a lot of people don't seem to remember now, is that it allowed Iran to build up its treasury and then use that money to fund Hamas, Syria, Iraqi Shia militias, the Houthis, Hezbollah, all the rest of it, and spread chaos and misery across the Middle East. That was the main objection to that. And that was negotiation. That was the attempt at negotiation, which Anita Anand, Melanie Joly, as her predecessor, Mark Carney, Justin Trudeau, they've all talked about this, the importance of negotiation. But I feel like that's quite obviously been tried, and it didn't succeed, did it? So what does that mean when they say things like, let's negotiate, as Carney said?
Yeah, I mean, there was a good clip there with Marco Rubio and Meet the Press there, and they were talking about, like that, pushing for negotiation, the Meet the Press reporter there. But Rubio stated that they had enriched uranium past 60%, which is weapons grade uranium, and they were fast tracking. So,
but this is the thing. I just feel like that's a fundamentally oxymoronic position. It's a self-contradicting position to adopt, to be against this action that the US and Israel have taken on the one hand, but then also say they can't have nuclear weapons.
Yeah.
Because if you're saying they can't have nukes, and everybody says that, basically, everybody in the world says that, they definitely can't have nukes, lads. Yeah. And then almost everybody also says, well, we can't attack them, though. So how are you going to bring this about? You're saying that there's no way they can have nukes. So how are you actually going to put your words into action? And I just feel like this is kind of one of the reasons why Canada, Europe, lots of other countries, they just don't matter. It doesn't matter what they say. They're just pedestrians They're
Yeah,
just
and here's it.
onlookers while the action takes place outside of their control. So it just doesn't matter what they say.
And here's a little clip that kind of plays into that because Mark Carney wouldn't talk on it. And here's the clip as he's, they catch him as he's heading off onto the plane here to go to Brussels. And let's play this clip.
Mr. Carney, do you agree with the Americans' decision to bomb Iran, sir?
That's good. And then he didn't have a statement until it seemed like Keir Starmer and then a couple other Europeans put out a statement. They were almost like plagiarized. Rupert Sherman there said, well, these statements that they came out with are almost identical to each other. So that's the curious part. Does he not have an opinion himself?
But in a way, I'm almost quite sympathetic with that idea because of what I just said there, and I sense that you agree as well with that, which is like Canada is just a complete non-actor in this. It's a complete non-entity. Nobody cares what Canada thinks. Nobody cares what Canada says. That's true not just for Canada, but for loads of countries. So I almost feel like, why doesn't Mark Carney just shut up? Just shut up about this. Like, it's got nothing to do with you. You don't understand it. You can't change it. You're not an active participant and couldn't be even if you wanted to be. So why not just get on with like trying to figure out how to build a pipeline? Don't waste time on something that you can't change and that you can't comprehend. That would almost be my advice. So it's just, but I suppose in the modern world, it's like you've got certainly modern Canada, it's like you've got to have an opinion on absolutely everything, haven't you? Every foreign adventure or misadventure. But I would honestly say the most honest, authentic response to this from a Canadian leader is, I don't know, like, nothing I can do about it. At least I would respect that. I'd be like, okay, well, that's true.
What I do really think this highlights is our lack of investment in our Canadian military. If you look at what the American military did, and again, we talk about our submarines, they parked a nuclear sub off the coast there and fired like 30 plus Tomahawks as well. Canada has 4 diesel subs. I think only 1 is operational, according to Mark Carney. And it would probably take us 3 months to get there. And then it would be as noisy as all. They wouldn't want us to go with them because we'd be making too much racket.
And we couldn't possibly fire Tomahawk missiles because that's obviously not good for truth and reconciliation, is it? To use an indigenous word for a weapon, that would be highly controversial, I think.
Yeah, just in our Air Force couldn't have made it there unless we put them on the backs of like some kind of, I don't know, boat of some kind, like, I don't know. Anyway,
a cruise liner.
Our investment in military has to change.
But the thing is, we don't need these. The Americans go out and attack people, don't they? They do this sort of thing, and it's kind of this is how they maintain their dominance in the world, and their whole system, economic and political system, is premised on that being the case. Canada doesn't do that, never will do that, I don't think. So we don't need that. We don't need these like carrier strike groups and things like that. But the thing that I'm concerned about is, it would be nice to know that we had the technology necessary to defend this country. And that's the biggest indictment of the political class in Canada, is that there is no way that Canada could defend itself against, for example, Iranian hypersonic missiles. What would we do? The only thing that we could do is phone the Americans and say, please shoot this missile down.
That's absolutely it. And at the same time, we boo their national anthem, and we'd be begging them for help.
Yeah, and that's like, you can look at that any way you want, but certainly one way to look at that is, why are we so lacking in self-reliance in that regard? Whereas a tiny country like Israel has this extremely sophisticated missile defense system, an amazingly powerful military. The Israelis could probably destroy the Canadian military and conquer Canada in about a week or something like that. Why is that the case? Why is this tiny country so much more powerful than we are?
I'm going to say something here, and then we're going to kind of like come back to it. But what you focus on is what you get. And what Canada's been focusing on is what it gets. And we haven't focused on our military, so that's what we get. And what you focus on is what you get. Just keep that in mind here as we move forward. CP had the story. They were all talking about how, it seemed like, like the headlines from CP and CTV was, return immediately to the negotiating table, Mark Carney says, and that just kind of stuff like that. And, the CTV. Mark Carney says him and Trump also spoke after and talked about de-escalating the conflict. I'm sure Canada has, again, lots of say in what's going to happen, right?
I mean, what the... Although the funniest thing about that summit is that apparently Trump was handed, I think they've literally described it as like a piece of paper, which was originated from the Iranians somehow, but I think it was a go-between had given it to them that said, if you attack Iran, we're gonna unleash all kinds of terror cells across the US, and we're gonna commit loads of terrorist attacks. It seems to me like we've been trying to process the value and the importance of this G7 summit. That was probably the most important moment, I would say. Trump being given a piece of paper, and shortly after which he decided to leave the summit.
Yeah, and then there's a BC professor that's trapped in Iran that says Canada has offered almost nothing to help him.
Yeah, pretty embarrassing, isn't it? Because that's usually what they emphasize, and that's certainly what Anita Anand has been emphasizing. It's like anyone in Iran or Israel, the affected countries, do this, do that, we'll help you, we'll put flights on, we'll get you safe. And yet this chap's saying nothing has happened. So, but I mean, just now as we've been chatting, and news alerts come through saying that they've told the Canadian Foreign Affairs Ministry, or whatever they call it now, has told Canadians in Qatar to shelter in place, which the British have also said, and the Americans have said that as well. So that suggests that and I'm just getting another alert here saying there's a credible threat of an Iranian missile attack on a US base in Qatar, imminent. So
this reporter is saying that Iran is likely to attack U.S. military facilities in the coming hours, per Iranian media, and he thinks this might be a symbolic attack with no casualties, just to kind of show that they had a reaction or a retaliation.
That's what happened last time when Trump killed Soleimani, isn't it? They telegraphed this attack on bases. I think it was in Iraq. And they were like, we're going to do it. We're going to do it, guys. And then the Americans were like, okay, and shot them all down.
Yeah, moving on to some other stuff. Big Friday, they passed Bill C-5 and with conservative support. So they passed that bill with 306 to 31. So the NDP and the bloc outside of that, I think one Liberal MP voted against it as well.
Ashton Smith, that guy that's been whining about it, he's the one that voted against it, yeah. Whereas the Tories, all in, absolutely all in. And then Andrew Scheer, in his typically charismatic way, absolutely full of gravitas, isn't he? Andrew Scheer gave a press conference and just complained like a sort of unhappy sheep sat on the hill there, just like, oh, it's just terrible, it's terrible. And then was asked the obvious question, so why did you vote for it then? And he's just kind of like, I think, but I mean, it's obvious why they voted for it. I think it's because the Tories, the very last thing the Conservatives want now is an election. They're in the pits right now.
But I also,
their poll reigns are right down.
I also think it might be a bit of show me then. Is, just like, here you go, this is what you asked for, let's show us the pipeline. And
yeah, I think also the Tories are looking at this and they've seen all this reaction so far from the First Nations and everybody, Quebec, BC, everybody whining on about it nonstop. I think they've saw it and they thought, all right, then let's see how you handle it then. Let's see what happens, kind of thing. Just trying to give them the rope to hang themselves.
Yeah, that's what exactly. Give them a little bit of trap there and say, okay, here you go. See what you can do. That the Bloc obviously called the bill the worst he'd seen. This is Bloc MP Xavier Barcelo Duval. It's been 9 years I've been sitting in the House, and I won't deny in 9 years this is Bill C-5 is the worst piece of legislation he's had to work on. Yeah, I can name a bunch of other ones that are worse than this, but yeah, like Bill C-18.
I mean, how many? The list is long. But the problem for Mr. Bloc Québécois is that they supported a lot of those dreadful bills, didn't they? At least in spirit, if not literally in Parliament.
And it sounds like,
I mean, for God, who's this for? Like, they just exaggerate and whine all the time. It's like, is there really an audience out there that's lapping this up from the Bloc? It's just like, they're just such malcontents, aren't they? They just never stop whining.
And it looks like Bill David Eby is kind of like walking it back a little bit. And we're going to play this little clip here with he's being interviewed by Vasconcelos of CTV. Are we? We're working on it. There you go.
There she is.
A few weeks ago on this program, the Premier of Alberta, when I posed to her against the backdrop of the pitch she was already making for a pipeline that went through her province carrying oil to the northwest part of yours, that you had at the time signaled like your view on that had not changed. She said she intends to convince you otherwise. Can she convince you?
Well, I think, sometimes I feel like the media is gathering around and chanting fight, fight, fight between us and Alberta right now. There's no fight here. The concern that I have is a matter of priorities. We have a taxpayer-funded pipeline, the TMX pipeline. It's owned by Canadians. It's not operating at capacity. There's 200,000 additional barrels of capacity in that pipeline. Let's start there. I don't support tens of billions of dollars in federal subsidy for a brand new pipeline across the north, getting rid of the tanker ban off the north coast. When we have major projects in BC and in Alberta with private companies that are advancing them, that are ready to work, ready to dig, ready to employ people, ready to diversify our trade relationships, why would we prioritize a massive public spend like that when more limited public spend could deliver additional capacity through the pipeline we already own, and so many projects that are ready to go with actual proponents and able to deliver in a short period of time?
I believe that he's probably not going to have much say if Carney utilizes Bill C-5, and I think that's why he's like pretending to soften up a bit.
Yeah, but I think also he's in there by a fraction. He's like, again, we say this about Carney. It's even more so the case about Eby. Like, he's not a strong premier. He doesn't have a strong position in BC. And he's trying to play it cautious, isn't he? He's trying to play it clever, and he's trying to just not commit to anything and doesn't want to upset the sort of fringe Green Party people that could theoretically screw him over in Parliament, and also some of his own fringe people within the NDP. But he also doesn't want to seem like he's like an obstacle to national renewal or anything like that. So I think he's trying to chart a very difficult course.
And he's also has the stovetop for the NDP is an absolute mess, and we're going to talk about that in a bit here. Like, there's stuff boiling over all over the place for the NDP. And let's talk about the federal NDP. Federal New Democrats are becoming more and more irrelevant, a former vote partner told the Commons on Friday. Liberal MP Kevin Lamoureux from Winnipeg North there, parliamentary secretary to the government House Leader, made the remark. As the Commons adjourned for the 12-week summer, obviously they got the Conservatives to vote for them, and they're just saying, well, we don't really even need the NDP. The NDP was the big crutch and support for the last 10 years of the Trudeau Liberals. So I don't know.
And this was forecast, wasn't it? This exact thing was predicted by many people.
Yeah. Yeah, and then Singh there, Jagmeet Singh, I don't know what he's doing, dancing at different rock concerts or different things like that. And he lost his own riding in Burnaby Central by 12,000 votes. And the party at its peak in 2011 elected 103 MPs, and Jagmeet Singh single-handedly destroyed that party. It doesn't even have official party status.
Yeah, and I suppose it hasn't helped the NDP that they've almost always been opposed to big projects as well, and the sort of the flavor of this year, and certainly this election, has been let's build stuff so that we're not poor and dominated by the Americans. The NDP, I think quite rightly, are perceived as being a bit of an obstacle to that by many people.
And then we do the Fool of the Day, and Melanie Jolie put her hand up here. We're going to play this clip here with Melanie Jolie and the elbows up, elbows down.
Their opposition contends right now that the opposite is true, that essentially by putting off, for example, levying counter tariffs, by the Prime Minister's display thanking the president or complimenting him on his world leadership publicly at the G7, that is in fact elbows down, counter to the elbows up message you campaigned on. How do you reconcile those things?
What is fascinating by the, when you look at the last parliamentary session, we've just finished on Friday, is that there was nearly no question by the opposition regarding our relationship with the U.S. The vast majority of the questions were not linked to it. Actually, when thinking of looking at how we can support the auto sector, they were not even referring to the trade war, much more on EV mandates, which we're working on. So what is fascinating by the opposition is when thinking of what they could have done themselves is I think they would have capitulated. I think that they would clearly have cozied up to the White House.
But that's what your government is doing right now. The Prime Minister is literally thanking the President for his world leadership at a time when the President has abandoned the U.S.'s position as a world leader.
No, I think that
that's not elbows up.
I think that the Prime Minister was in charge of the G7. His job was to welcome the President. He was in a very difficult position. We all know that. All G7 leaders knew that. They were actually thanking Prime Minister Carney for doing the tough job that, not a lot of them wanted necessarily at this time, but it was our year. Canada is in charge of the G7, and therefore, Prime Minister Carney was doing the diplomatic work that was required from Canada. Meanwhile, I think in the context of the G7, we're able to get to important good results. What I've seen, meanwhile, while the Prime Minister was in Kananaskis, I was in Paris at the Paris Air Show, where I saw that more than ever, countries want to do business with Canada.
I will leave it on that note. I'm out of time. I appreciate your
I just wonder, how like ministers, big ministers who serve in government, usually more than one government, they've got they have like a base of support usually, don't they? And they represent like a group of people. And you can see that in the US, for example, because I'm just using that because it's the most obvious thing to say. Well, you look at some of these American kind of heavy hitters like Marco Rubio and so on. They have their bases, like you know who loves them, and there are people out there that love them and love what they stand for. Does Melanie Joly have a base like that? Do you think? Does anybody like Melanie Joly? That's what I'm left thinking after listening to her there. It's like, who is this woman? I just don't understand why she's one of the most powerful people in this country. She's never shown me a reason why, not even one reason why she would be in that seat.
What she misses for me is just a dose of honesty every now and then would be helpful to help with her credibility.
Or just answer questions. That would probably help as well. Yeah. The refusal to answer questions. I mean, it's ironic that she completely refused to answer that question and in the process accused the Conservative Party of basically sort of dodging responsibilities.
Yeah.
I mean, how do they do it? I don't know.
She failed to mention that the Conservatives also supported their Bill C-5 and they wouldn't have passed it without them.
Yeah, indeed. But that's a little bit embarrassing, I suppose.
The Globe and Mail put out another opinion piece and says, Canada, get ready for another decade of thrift and lower living standards. And that is coming through time and time again. And this is what we need to focus on. What we focus on is what we get. And we have not focused on our economy for 10 years, as Justin Trudeau said famously that he doesn't worry about the economy or the budget. The budget takes care of itself, and he doesn't worry about the economy.
I don't want another decade of declining living standards. Thanks. You can have that, Globe and Mail, but I don't want that.
I don't think anybody wants that, but what you focus on is what you get. And then here you go, long COVID. There's dismay among patients as long COVID clinic shuts down. People suffering from long-term effects of COVID-19 long COVID have been left dismayed after a rehab program in Ontario was shut down after operating for just 4 years. The service at Ottawa Hospital helped treat more than 160 patients. But Dennis Murphy, who spent nearly 2 years on the program's wait list, said his ailment is having a very serious impact on his life. You could say that to everybody in Canada that can't get a family doctor.
Indeed.
That can't get a scan, that
can't even go to ER.
Can't do this, can't do that, can't do this, and we're worried about long COVID, like for 160 patients there, right? Anyway.
There's like a specialist in this article. This is the CBC, of course. Don't think anyone else would cover this story. But there's an expert in there right at the end who comes out and says that it's almost, she compares it to HIV, and that how there wasn't very good studies available on HIV initially, not very good research, and how people weren't really cared for properly. So
You're
there you
talking
go.
about you're talking about
COVID,
100.
the new HIV.
You're talking about 160 people, and COVID is in there for sure. And how many millions of Canadians can't get a family doctor?
What was the most recent report? I think it was it like 5 million or something?
I thought it's
millions anyway.
It's 3 to 5, I think, somewhere in there. But yeah, so again, more than 160 people. But this story, they seem to like to do with anything that has to do with COVID. They seem to want to focus on. America is leading the charge in buying New Zealand's golden visa. There you go. Trump was selling a $5 million American visa, but here's New Zealand also picked up on that and selling out the golden visa. And remember, he got in trouble for selling a golden visa, but it looks like the Kiwis figured it out as well.
Not the only ones. Lots of countries do it. But yeah, I mean, this is interesting because New Zealand is a lot of people who think that the world might come to an end of some kind with nuclear weapons used or something like that, some sort of war coming. A lot of them look at New Zealand as like the safest place to go. But it is ironic, isn't it? Because like I'm pretty sure the last time that we talked about New Zealand, we were talking about how everybody's trying to flee New Zealand. They're all trying to escape, and they're losing their young people because the economy is so slow, and they're all going to Australia.
That Prime Minister there, Jacinda. Was it
Jacinda
Ardern or something like that? And she left just on a suddenly. We still don't know what happened there.
But yeah, I mean, Peter, I believe it's that Peter Thiel fella. He sort of kicked a lot of this off, didn't he? And then there's all kinds of stories out there of how they're supposedly building like bunkers and stuff like that in New Zealand. And it's like, this is the place that apparently a lot of the American oligarchs are going to see out the apocalypse.
Well,
but I mean, this is from The Guardian. So, I mean, it's obvious why The Guardian would focus on this. But this article focuses on Trump. And it suggests that these Americans want to get away from Trump, which I don't think is the whole story.
Zuckerberg is building his fortress there in Hawaii. But here we are, one day past the 2-year anniversary of Bill C-18, where the media is still being choked off by this liberal government, and no chance of that being repealed as they're out now for summer. So this goes at least till, September or forever. Canada is the only G7 nation that has a compromised media that is living off the handouts selectively. The government selectively hands out some funding, crumbs to some of the media, and lots of crumbs to they get the full buffet at the CBC. Some of the other outlets get some crumbs, and some of the other ones get nothing but a knee in the throat. June 22nd was the 2-year anniversary of Bill C-18.
Very sad. Although it didn't actually start to produce bad effects until August, did it? Yeah.
Yeah, but it was the day of assent or whatever, right? That it was approved.
Royal assent, yeah. No, and then because then there was like a time limit, wasn't there? And Meta at this point, Facebook was saying, "We're not going to comply with this. We're just gonna ban news from for Canadians."
And Canadians called the bluff.
I sort of feel like there was disbelief. There was disbelief from the government, wasn't there? They thought this is just a ploy. Like, you're going to negotiate.
And then what's his name bragged about it the other day and saying that they got $100 million out of Google. And that they said arguing about Bill C-18 is immoral. Well, turns out Google didn't pay any of that money. Google is charging a digital sales tax, which it keeps, to pay that $100 million. So who pays for it? The Canadian taxpayer, right? So they didn't get the money from Google.
Lawmaking, isn't it?
What's that? Google didn't figure that out. Google keeps that money, and maybe they even keep more of it. So they got basically an authorization to charge businesses a digital sales tax, and then they kept that and they doled some of it out to. We're going to try and find out how much they're actually generating out of this digital sales tax, and the $100 million that Stephen Guilbeault brags about that says that that they got Google to pay $100 million. They didn't. Google didn't pay $100 million. You were paying it.
Well, that's one of the advantages of running a monopoly, isn't it? You can basically just pass on any charge you want. And presumably the federal government would have known that, you know. Facebook also could have done that. But I guess they just couldn't be bothered. And they just thought, screw it, we'll just block news instead.
Yeah, like, I mean, when they said to Google, well, you don't actually have to pay it. You can actually charge it. And then you can keep Google's like, okay. And here you go. Here's the big test here for the provincial NDP. Here's the Alberta NDP leader. Naheed Nishi is looking to finally win a seat in the legislature after sitting a year on the sidelines, kind of like Pierre Poilievre is sitting out there right now. And he's running in one of the 3 provincial by-elections as a candidate for the Edmonton Strathcona. That's where Rachel Notley had last won 80% of the vote. So that's a NDP stronghold for sure. But also there's a separatist one running in rural Alberta there too, a Republican Party of Alberta. So it's going to be interesting to see.
That will be the more interesting one, I think.
Oh.
It's almost like there's no point even looking at the Nenshi thing. He's obviously going to win that. It's an absolute guarantee, isn't it? It's already finished. But the Republican Party of Alberta, don't know why they've chosen that name, to be honest, but the separatists, anyway, that's the one to watch, just as a measure of, you know, what people are actually feeling in Alberta.
And this one here is, I've seen this a few times now, and this is 40% of Canadians now cutting back on food just to be able to afford to pay their rent. It's not a housing crisis, it's a national emergency. In Atlantic Canada, it's 53%, in Alberta, 50%. And this is an RBC poll here. People having to reduce spending on groceries. Well, you actually buy a lot less groceries with inflation as well.
I mean, it is literally an abomination, that, isn't it? That in this country that's happening, and so few people with any power in this country, so that would be the Liberal Party, seem to mention it or focus on it. It's just not. I hear a lot more about obscure sort of fringe issues than I do this sort of thing. You'd think this would be the #1 issue of the day, wouldn't you?
You'd think so. I mean, you'd think this should be the primary focus. And again, what you focus on is what you get. The NDP have focused on, for how long? Focused on free drugs and all that kind of stuff, and less criminal punishment, and didn't focus on the economy. And what do we got? What do we have?
Yeah.
Let's move on to BC
well,
stuff
if you ask
here.
David Eby, we've got the engine of the Canadian economy. That's what David Eby thinks BC brings to the table.
Might be some gaslighting there. So it turns out, here's Chrystia Freeland, a longtime friend of the show, actually sent a letter that they actually have now produced here, sent a letter admonishing David Eby and the NDP for giving that contract to the Chinese shipbuilder. In the letter, Freeland said she was surprised BC Ferries does not have a mandate for an appropriate level of Canadian procurement given the value of the contract. And a statement from Farmers Minister said it was reviewing the letter. Maybe just read the letter and then do some action. BC Ferries, in a statement, said the Chinese bid was the strongest by a significant margin. Yeah, they always undercut because they get to work with unfair labor practices and a whole bunch of other things, of course, and lousy steel. So there you go. And then the EB's excuse, obviously, is that BC Ferries is an independent company, but it's all the board members are put there by the NDP. So
that's a complete distraction. That's so misleading. I mean, where's CBC and all the rest of them to do a fact check on this claim, which is just entirely false? The BC government has control over BC Ferries, put it that way, and the federal government, if it chose to, could basically have control over the BC government as well. And they choose to do nothing.
And we're going to say this over and over again. This, I think, could be the BC NDP's biggest scandal of this year. And they got a lot to compete with. Do you know what I mean? Like they got a lot. They got a lot of pots on the stove that are just foaming all over the place. I don't even think they know what they're doing at this point.
Well, if a story comes out from some NGO or something like that, if the NGOs can ever, move away from trying to scrutinize Israel all the time and actually look around the world, and they do a report on slave labor in China, let's say they do that in the next year or something like that, right away that makes David Eby look like an absolute idiot, doesn't it? Because then a decision that he is allowed to go ahead, which is in effect his decision at this point,
well,
the pressure's then on him for having basically paid for slave labor.
Well, here you go. This is a story out of Nikkei Asia. U.S. blacklists China. It's the MIT as the tech war enters new phase. And this is from Harman Bangu, the MLA here for the Conservatives. He said the shipyard building our ferries is also tied to a blacklisted sanctioned Chinese military-linked institute. EB handed over tax dollars on security to Beijing.
I don't believe that. I don't believe that BC Ferries, the people involved in this decision, I don't believe that Mark Carney or any of these people are naive to these facts. You don't have to be like a China expert to know roughly sort of how it works over there. Everything is under the supervision of the Chinese Communist Party to some extent or another. This
could well bring down the BC NDP. This scandal is going to get worse and worse and worse. And the longer that they don't pull it back, the worse it's going to get.
Well, and look at the feeble response from Chrystia Freeland as well. It's just kind of like she's basically just tut, and sort of wagged her finger. David Eby's saying, nothing to do with me, mate. And people need ferries. And I'm not going to let a pregnant woman sit there in the heat waiting for a ferry or some similar sort of non sequitur that he decided to pull out of his backside.
It's the same type of response.
This is what's happening. Like, it's going ahead. It's happening. It's just they're just trying to bury it and pretend it's not their fault.
They are not people of action. It's the same type of thing as like when we talked earlier about the Iranian enrichment. We say, well, they shouldn't do it and expect something to happen. And here we go. What's the message? Use Canadian steel, use Canadian aluminum. We need jobs. Here's a project, lots of steel, lots of aluminum, lots of jobs.
Chrystia Freeland used astonishing powers, like the sort of powers that it's actually kind of crazy that a Canadian government even has those powers when you think about Canadian history, to with the Ottawa truckers and to get at people who donated money to these truckers through through a fundraising website. That was like interdicted, wasn't it? That was like, let's use all the powers of the state to stop this random guy in Saskatoon giving $20 to the Ottawa truckers. So that's a time to act. That's a time to use war powers, like actual powers that are designed so that Canada can fight a war to defend its existence. Let's do that. But if it's billions, hundreds of millions or billions of dollars being given to the Chinese Communist Party, the number one threat to the Western world, and Canada included, then it's just kind of like, I'm going to write a letter. I'm going to write you a letter, David Eby.
I guess the question is why? Why did they exercise that much power on like that small bakery on the island there and froze their bank account, basically choked them off the ability to operate, no different than they do with Bill C-18 here. Choked them off. And yet here it is, this looks absolutely contentious and really bad visually, and nothing except for that, like, hey, you shouldn't do that.
I mean, it's almost as if they don't have any principles or any kind of moral seriousness at all. It's almost as if they should go and attend church or a philosophy seminar or something to try and figure out what it is to actually have moral positions.
And this Harman Bangu again, he said that Don Davies, who leads the Federal NDP, Don Davies attends a party at the Chinese consulate, and David Eby sends our shipbuilding contracts to the Chinese state-run shipyards, and different NDP leaders, same disturbing pattern. They're not standing with Canadians, they're standing with the CCP. And again, that Chinese consulate thing, that was one part of the problem with some of the MPs that were disgraced in the federal election.
Yeah. I mean, and then they always, the thing is, they get caught doing something like this, and then it's all about realism, isn't it? All of a sudden, it's like, China's the second biggest economy in the world. Like, we've got to do business with them, you know? Like, what else can we do? It's like these same people that really aggressively refuse to be realistic about, I don't know, for example, Canada's natural resources. Just as an example, to pluck off the top of my head, that's not a time for realism. That's a time for, like, you know, get yourself dressed up in a wolf skin and pretend to be some kind of like creature of Mother Earth and be a hippie and stand there and say no to pipelines. But like, oh, we have to do business with the Chinese, mate. Obviously, I mean, I know they're not. I know the Communist Party's not very nice, but we have to do business with them. For one thing, they can help us stop this pipeline.
Didn't Mark Carney come out and say that they're our greatest threat? But hey.
Indeed.
And then the BC NDP, you think the ferry pot is boiling over, but this one here continues to boil over and punishes so many British Columbians. Again, no emergency services at a BC Interior Health Centre this morning and afternoon. And this time it's Caramias. So this has been Lillooet, Caramias, Oliver, and the dance goes on. And then the closure of the pediatric ward here in Kelowna. And no word on the leadership here at the Interior Health, and we've asked for an interview several times now, and they say they're working on it, and nothing.
I feel for these. I mean, I feel for them all, but especially like places that I sort of know a little bit. Like, this is a pretty isolated place, isn't it? It's just, I can't imagine it. Imagine you have an actual emergency as well, and it's just like, sorry, we failed you. Go to Penticton. See you later.
What we focus on is what we get.
It's really not right.
What we focus on is what we get. The BC government and Dr. Bonnie Henry focused for an extended period of time on COVID restrictions, where other hospitals and other health authorities moved past that and focused on their health care. And this is why we're still here. We focus on is what we get. So we had Merritt had 2 doctors that left because of the COVID restrictions and did not return. But anyway, and here's another.
Well, the thing is, that's a little bit more interesting and glamorous, and it can take you away from the reality of trying to fix like intractable problems like staffing in you know, more rural areas of BC. It's like, who wants to work on that? You know, when you can go up to the podium every day and make these grand announcements while millions of people are hanging on your every word. You can totally see why they would be tempted to do it, and that's often. Incompetent leaders and failures in general often do that, don't they? It's like, rather than fix the thing that they should fix, that's actually really hard and almost like sometimes boring to fix, they go off and do other things. It's the same thing with these mad hippies that go out and protest against whatever it is they want to protest against, Israel or something like that, rather than trying to fix their own sad lives.
Yeah. And again, Eleanor Sturko, a champion on the drug issues, drug policies here in British Columbia. Her tweet there is I'm going to pronounce this wrong, Kawakitil First Nation is looking to follow Heidi Gwai's lead in banishing drug dealers who terrorize their community. This is what happens when the NDP push pro-drug, anti-police policies and shamelessly only use Indigenous people to virtue signal that they care. And this is the new chief there, Verona Hunt, has said band members have voted in favor of a motion calling for 4 of its members living on the reserve to be exiled. And the drug
There's been
policy.
a few First Nations have expressed dismay at the BC government and the federal government. So this has been building for a long time. Yeah, because they've complained that like they can't stop the flow. They almost think of it as like it's like an invasion coming from another country. That's how a lot of them feel about it. So I'm really not surprised.
It was David Eby's and Justin Trudeau's experiment in very, very loose drug policies here in British Columbia that got us where we are right now.
Well, yeah, over many years as well, many years.
Yeah, and then Dan Ashton was a former mayor here locally. It says, those who know me will know I am far from being an alarmist, but I'm deeply concerned right now as I've never witnessed a provincial government failing so severely across the board as the BC NDP. I am alarmed as I see no effort, concern, even acknowledgement that serious changes are needed. And then that's what we've been saying. Like, the pots on the stove are boiling over, and they have so many pots that they're not attending to. They don't even know what they're doing, I don't think. I don't even know where they focus their attention, because they've been so, I guess they've been so kind of like comforted with the fact that they can virtue signal and the media doesn't call them out on it. And they've been doing this virtue signaling for a long time and getting away with it. And right now, the pots are boiling over so bad that it's very hard to hide with this virtue signaling.
Yeah. It'd be good to have a chat to him, actually. He was a BC Liberal, wasn't he, MLA? But it's obviously there's a partisan angle there.
Yeah,
but it would be good to have a chat to him, because he's not the only one saying this. That's kind of, I mean, people are really, really afraid. I almost get the feeling that people are afraid about British Columbia, which can seem a bit mad, because obviously in the meantime, things are looks like things are just about okay. But
I mean,
these things happen fast. You know, when things decay, it's usually very, very slowly, and then all at once, isn't it? That's what they say about countries and provinces that fail.
And we've said this many times too, is I think the BC NDP has run out of ideas, and they're trying to use, and I think you've said it many times, is they're using politics from 10 years ago, and it's failing in this moment. And they haven't focused on the economy. Investment in British Columbia, it's hard to get, and their two main industries are suffering: mining and forestry. It's hard to get a permit. And then forestry is in shambles, and like the job losses in forestry is unbelievable, 10,000 plus in I think the last couple of years, and just the permitting and all that, all the stuff, and they've kind of done this commission to take a look. And the industry said it lacks proper representation by industry, and of course that would be the norm for the NDP. Mark Nixon put this out though, and he said, what's wrong with David Eby? And I think the pressures are obviously getting to him. There's too many pots on the stove, and they just don't have the people or the skill set to get out of this mess. I mean, maybe
look at his face there.
Yeah, maybe they should.
That's not the face of a man that's at ease with life. And he's got a young kid. He's got 3 kids. They're all quite young, I think, but one of them's really young.
At some point,
I mean, he's an activist. He's a left-wing activist lawyer. Why on earth he thought he could run a province in the first place, I don't know. Why did he even think he could do that?
So I think one of the things just to consider is, I think the BC NDP is working on the lowest common denominator, and I think they're getting everybody almost at the lowest common denominator. And instead of working on focusing the economy and lifting people up, they're pulling everybody down to their level. With Renee Merrifield said 33 new taxes since they've taken office, and they're running out of people to tax. Anybody with a good idea or capital is not going to invest in BC right now, not in this environment. I talked to the leaders in the tech sector too and said this is not a place to be.
Yeah, for many reasons. It used to be the cost of housing. I think that's still probably partly the reason, but all the taxes and unpredictability can't help either.
But
and just the crime, like nobody wants to live somewhere that your car can be broken into. Like there's a reasonable chance your car will be broken into, and then just nothing will happen, even if the person that did it is caught. They'll just be released. It's like nobody wants to live there, do they? Nobody likes that.
The answer to everything for the NDP is more rules, more regulation, more red tape, and more taxes.
It's a very old critique. It's almost like this is the sort of thing like people like Thomas Sowell, if you know him, the American economist. It's the sort of thing that these people were rabbiting on about in the 1960s, 1970s. That's how ancient these arguments are, and it's quite an indictment of the BC NDP that you could pretty much go back in time and get one of these arguments from half a century ago, and it would apply almost perfectly now to the present situation of like introducing taxes, scaring away capital, things like the Laffer curve of like that optimum level of tax that you can have before you actually start to lose revenue if you go too high. There's so many questions, and then there's also this other kind of anarcho-tyranny angle, which is like you get as a law-abiding citizen in a place like BC, you get screwed over all the time, and like you'll get fined, you'll get a red light camera will get you, something like that. Like you're constantly being like pecked away at, while people that commit serious crimes like assault and robbery and so on are like out of prison the 10 minutes after they've been caught.
I mean, if you think of some of the things, like in BC, for the people that can't afford as much, the new stuff, you can't even buy a used vehicle without paying 12% tax at the start, and it actually escalates. Like used vehicles in Alberta, there's no tax on a used vehicle. Anyway, it's some good news, I guess. And this is, I did that interview with Fireswarm, I think it was last week, and they've signed some kind of deal here, partnering with Interjex and also Strategic Natural Resources Group, which is an indigenous business there, to get this wildfire. This is the drone they're standing beside. This is the Fireswarm drone that has the bucket. They're a bucket one, so getting some wildfire mitigation, or not mitigation, but initial attack going. So I guess there's some good news. We got lots of wildfires here.
Yeah, I didn't realize it was quite that big. Looking at the other pictures, they should have done next to a human, because that's really good, isn't it, to show how big it is.
Yeah. So if you want to go watch that interview I did with the CEO there, you can go watch it. It's on our NowMedia YouTube channel, and it's also on Kelowna Now. There you go. Now we're going to move on to markets. And you would have thought that the stock market would have reacted very poorly to what happened there with the midnight hammer, but again, stock market fairly muted. Not much reaction. Even I think gold was mildly up for a while there, and I guess it's up about $18 right now. But again, all mild reactions as opposed to like big reaction. Oil is off actually today. Oil is off a couple bucks in the West Texas Intermediate, and so is the Western Canadian Select is actually just flat. And the Bank of Canada is hoping for a better look at a complicated inflation picture. So then, there's talk that we're going to get that cut in July. There's also talk in the U.S. There's a couple of Fed governors now saying they want to cut in July as well. Trump wants them to cut full 2 percentage points. I doubt if they're going to get that from him, though. But the really big news, and
he likes to exaggerate, doesn't he? To try and he likes to he goes for the maximalist option, doesn't he? And then he's happy with something in the middle.
And this is the really big news, and this is the huge news out there right now, and the stock has reacted very well to it. It's Tesla. They launched the RoboTaxi. This is the much-awaited event, happened in Austin, Texas. Here, we got a little clip here. Those are Waymos there. That's good there. So then you got a Waymo, and you got a Tesla, RoboTaxi, and a horse. Whatever you want, everything you need. Again, it launched, and the stock was up. The stock was up as much as over 10% this morning here, and it hit a high of US 357 right now, about 345, and the stock's probably going to trade around a bit. And here's an interview with CNBC and Elon Musk on this RoboTaxi. I think this could be, and the reason I'm playing is, this is a huge moment for AI. This is because the RoboTaxi is all based on AI. So let's play this clip here.
My prediction is that probably by the end of next year, we'll have probably hundreds of thousands, if not
hundreds of thousands,
if not over 1 million Teslas doing self-driving in the U.S.
Those are not okay. What percentage of those are going to be, well, not the cyber cab, you're just talking about on full self-driving, level 4.
Unsupervised full self-driving,
right.
Meaning you do not need to pay attention.
Right. For
There you go. I mean, it's that this moment is huge. If this is successful and it rolls out, this is the defining moment for autonomous vehicles in the world, really. Vision-based software. This is not Waymo with all the LiDAR and all the stuff in walled gardens. This is actual autonomous vehicles. So looking for it in trucking. And then Dan Ives put out a piece, and he's an analyst there, and he has a like a huge price target. You can go find it yourself. I'm not going to pump that price target, but and then there's another guy that has huge price targets. So this could well change the game for transportation in the world. I don't know when it would ever get to Canada because, you know, like we have a government that doesn't really believe in technology. You can just by who they appointed into AI, and they have tariffs on Teslas. So there you go. And then there's the tipping function here. There's a lot of people complaining about tipping lately because, you know, you go to the restaurants now, some of them start at 20. Like, you know, when you do, you know, they give you those tip options, 20, 22, 25. It's just like, people can't even afford the bill, never mind these extraordinary tips, and some people are refusing to tip now. So anyway, the funny part in here is that there's a tip option in the RoboTaxi, but when you click to go to tip it, it says just kidding, because it doesn't want to tip. It's a flat fee right now.
That'd be huge, though. That would be... I mean, if this comes off, it is really going to change the economy, isn't it? Fundamentally, there's lots of other effects, but it's going to change the economy. Since so many people drive for a living, it's going to make many people redundant, and it's going to make life cheaper in some ways. But I guess they need to find other work.
Just think of your family costs, though, too. If you don't have to maintain a vehicle, if you just and I think the fee they're charging there is $4.20 versus, and they showed some numbers. And showing that, like, for Uber or a taxi, it was like in the 20+ range, and it was a flat fee of $4.20. And the cool thing is, if you have the Tesla app, when you get in the car, it syncs automatically to your phone, like, and you're in the back seat there. And so your music that you were last playing on your app starts playing, and you have access to everything on the screen. And there's some safety devices in the screens as well, where you can pull over or stop or call for support and stuff like that. And I watched probably 20 of these people that were invited to try it out, because, you know, obviously that's free advertising when you get all these influencers that are Tesla fans to go and do it. And they were all seamless drives. They did have a safety driver in the passenger seat that didn't intervene though, but they was there just in case as they start rolling this out in Austin, Texas.
It's amazing, isn't it? Remarkable.
But in Canada, Chrystia Freeland is pumping the bicycle. There you go. She says the drivers are split on the EV mandate. Canadians are sharply divided on the electrical vehicle mandate here to be enforced beginning in 2026, says that in-house research by Transport Minister Chrystia Freeland's department. There was no consensus, and that's like so obvious, right? I mean, you don't have to be a rocket scientist or do a report for that. There are different opinions on this 2035 zero-emission mandates among Canadians, wrote the researchers. There's no consensus about requirements for all new cars and light trucks to be sold to be zero-emission by 2035. But the punishment starts here next year, though. The punishment starts if the manufacturer makes vehicles over a certain amount, they're going to get punished severely for that. And that's what they're talking about. So if they don't drop that EV mandate, there will be no automobile sector in Canada, I don't believe.
I mean, it's even, I think, more important than that is you won't even be able to buy a used gas car, will you? They're going to become like gold dust. Because everybody's just going to look to the used market, aren't they?
And then the other thing is that the best EV out there, they put a 25% tariff on it. So even they say buy an EV, this is where the comedy starts. Buy an EV, so you say, okay, I'll buy an EV, I'll buy the best EV out there. No, don't buy that EV. I don't know. No idea. No idea.
Yeah, I think that's the position of the government as well. No idea. They've got no idea what they're doing.
And then this health article in our health section, our newly added health section here, CTV put out this tweet here. It says, you probably don't need foods with added protein, nutritionists say. Well, I would argue against that. But experts say, if you can't afford protein, just eat some crickets. It goes on to say, as long as you're not starving, you're probably getting enough protein. Right? We've seen so many cases of people. Again, this is CTV putting this article out. As long as you're not starving, you're probably getting enough protein. Yeah, like very, you're probably not. The World Health Organization recommends that healthy adults get about 0.4 grams of protein per pound of health. That's about 6. You know how important it is for people as they age to have enough protein so they can maintain muscle mass or grow muscle mass? But hey,
Or regenerated after they do exercise. So, you know, even if they go up a flight of stairs or something, you need to regenerate your muscles, don't you?
but as long as you're not starving, you're probably getting enough. Experts say. And then this doctor, I found, this Dr. Tro out there, he says, beware of low-carb diets. It may let you reclaim your health and bankrupt your doctor, and he's a doctor. So low-carb or high-carb cheap foods, especially foods laden with sugar, are just not good for you. Experts say. Okay? Experts say. If you eat frosted flakes, if you eat frosted flakes for breakfast, sugar pops for lunch, and mix them up, Fruit Loops for dinner, you're going to look like you don't give a hoot about your health. And there you go. We're almost done. We got the Are You Serious section. Look, we're almost just at an hour today. The Fool of the Day, we'll come to that. But this is a Babylon Bee. Canada continues time-honored tradition of being worse than USA at everything. And that's somebody taking a shot at us for once again losing the Stanley Cup. We claim that to be our game. It's not our official, like, the game we invented, but we claim it to be our game. I think it's since 1993. It's been a while.
Not acceptable, is it? And a lot of Canadians were relishing the defeat of the Oilers. I don't understand that.
I don't understand either.
Where's your patriotism?
The elbows up crowd, right? Again, lots of Canadians play. Lots of Canadians play on that team. Lots of Canadians in Florida as well. And then this is this one here. I think is for the BC people. They all want free college, free internet, free debt relief, free reparations, free housing, free UBI, and free family leave. And it's like the old city workers, one guy in the ditch digging, the taxpayer, and everybody else saying, hurry up, dig more. Just a little bit more, right? This is this is David Eby's BC NDP right here. Everything's free until that taxpayer dies or leaves. Now what? Now what?
Then you're all going to have to jump in that grave, aren't you?
And then here you go. City pools, this is an Ontario thing. City pools forced to intermittently close on Sunday due to heat and humidity levels. God forbid you go to a pool and cool off. Okay?
I mean, it's a little bit like the wind turbines that can't work when it's too windy. Something that's like, oh, okay.
Reminds me of that.
Good one.
Reminds me of the Mad Magazine quote that was, due to lack of interest, tomorrow will be canceled. I guess clearly an ID10T error. Fool of the day?
Are we not going to have Kristi Noem here?
Oh, yeah, we got one more. Sorry, yeah. No, so we got to play this clip here because I think, yeah, let's play Kristi. She's talking about our friend Justin Trudeau. Who could forget him? Let's play this.
I'll tell you is that the former Prime Minister of Canada, Justin Trudeau, was a train wreck. He was a train wreck and he was hard to work for. I worked with him previously and in trying to build relationships with Canada so that we knew who was crossing our border, asking them to take back their citizens that were illegal here in this country. He was
heard that from so many Americans, haven't we now? It's becoming quite a common thing to hear.
Choo choo, right? Choo choo. Trudeau coming through. You will not ride on a plane, a train, or whatever. What else did he say? That most people that wouldn't take the COVID vaccine are misogynist, racist, homophobic, all those things. And then he later on went to say that he never forced anybody to take it. And the economy takes care of itself. No. There's so many lines. Like he's a meme a minute. He doesn't worry about the economy. The budget balances itself.
Basic dictatorship. That was another good one, wasn't it? I admire China's basic dictatorship.
He was a meme. So I mean, Fool of the day. There's a tough call now. Trudeau campaigning with Jolie.
Yeah, Jolie, and then there's EB though. That's what I'm thinking. I've got EB. I can't get EB out of my head. Just looking like a sort of sad clown with his makeup off, being berated by Bassi Capellas. I think I'm gonna have to do it. I'm gonna have to say EB was the fool of this episode.
I have to agree with you there. I think, like I said, I think they got too many pots on the stove. A healthcare crisis in British Columbia is absolutely out of control. And their idea there, if we go back to that, their idea, we talked about it on Friday, is to go down to Seattle and give away free coffee to doctors and nurses in front of a hospital to try and convince them to come to British Columbia. How do you think that's going to work out? And then $5 million being spent.
Talk to them about how evil Trump is. That'll persuade them.
And then $5 million being spent with American social giants. Well, zero is being spent with local independent media. Zero. And then that ferry thing, I don't know how any media that gets to ask the questions can take that answer that they don't have any say in the BC Ferry is an independent company. It's absolutely ludicrous. Absolutely lunacy.
I don't, and Mark Carney still hasn't really been pressed on this. I don't think he's actually been asked a single question about this. This is in any other country, I feel like this would be the #1 scandal nationwide. But this is just sort of, it's like, you can sense it, can't you? It's starting to dissipate. It's dribbling away out of people's memory. And
I don't think it's going to go away.
This will be completely forgotten, I think.
I disagree. I think this could bring down the BC NDP. I'm going to go with that.
I think if to keep it alive, there has to be that NGO report into slave labor in China or something like that. There has to be new stuff has to come out, new pressure. Well, I mean, the BC Conservatives they have a big role to play here as well, because if they keep talking about it, then it will be alive to some extent. Yeah. We're
going to try and get Harman for an interview, and we're also going to try and get Dan Ashton for an interview. And we'll see what we can do with those.
Starman Harman. I would say, before we leave anyway, that we began this by saying that there'd been an alert in Qatar, and we can end it now with saying that it has been struck now. The Iranians have hit, or they've said they've hit bases in Qatar and Iraq, US bases. So the game is afoot.
Yeah, I just see it. American Patriot missiles activating as Iran launches 6 missiles forward into U.S. forces in Qatar. And I guess it'll remain to be seen what the reaction from the Americans will be.
Well, Trump said, didn't he, and so did Rubio, they both said, if you hit back, if you hit bases, we're going to hit you with so much more force than we just have. And I presume that that's true, that they're going to hit back pretty hard.
Yeah, and then this is another one, explosions being heard over Doha, the capital of Qatar. What's that? And you can tell that the markets did sell off a bit just recently as well. I mean, the markets really can tell you what's going on, right? I mean, they're kind of still flat in gold. Again, the American military machine is absolutely without challenger. So,
absolutely. I mean, to the extent that countries don't even try, do they? They don't even try. It's there's only one player in the world, really. The Chinese theoretically one day, maybe, but not now.
One of the points that you brought up is Canada's military is severely been Justin Trudeau and the Liberals have neglected it for the past 10 years. We don't have those F-35s, which should be in service right now. The ones that Harper ordered, they should be in service right now. They're not. They're still not even on the order book, I don't think.
Some aircraft, some sophisticated aircraft.
They're still not on the order book because Jolie in the last, we played it last day, she's meeting with all of these suppliers. The lead times to get these things is not you don't go there and pick them out of the lineup like your local GM dealer, right? You order them, right? And they take years. Yeah. That's why Harper, when he ordered them, it takes a while. They don't build them they don't print them with a 3D printer. And, but again, you pointed out that Israel, a small country, has this very strong and, all feared military. I mean, look what they've done many times with that military.
Yeah, despite having a population of, well, it's under 10 million, I think, isn't it? It's not a very large population at all. Yeah, just under 10 million. I mean, so that's a population smaller than Ontario's, and yet they have a military probably, what, 50 times more powerful than Canada's, maybe 100 times.
Yeah, I think on the upper end of that estimate there that you just made, for sure. Well, that's our show for today. There's a fraud. Somebody's saying that there's fraud in BC elections. I know people are looking at that for sure. And there you go. We do thank everybody that's commenting too. Yeah, I give an honorary. I agree with Iain there. Give Trudeau an honorary FOD. I think he should get what you call the Hall of Fame for that. We should put Trudeau in the Hall of Fame. We should retire his jersey and the Fool of the Day. Definitely. Iain, a good call there. Fool of the Century, or decade, or whatever you want to call it. Fool of the Century. I don't know. Like, we're going to take a lot to unseat him, for sure.
It's easy to forget, isn't it? Now that he's not doing press conferences every day, it's easy to forget.
Hall of Famer for sure. Hall of Famer for sure. And how many of his crew will join him? His past crew, Freeland, Jolie, Guilbeault, will join him on the hallowed walls of Fool of the Hall of Fame Fool.
Champagne's another all-star.
Yeah,
They're like the Harlem Globetrotters of Fool of the Day.
There you go. There you go. Thanks, Iain. And we'll see you guys all tomorrow. We appreciate you watching, appreciate you sharing, appreciate you commenting, and have a great day. We'll see you tomorrow morning at 9 a.m.
We don't just report the news. We live here too. We're your neighbors, bringing you stories that matter to all of us. No government funding, no outside influence. Kelowna Now, local, independent.